The city streets were quiet that afternoon when Jamal, a 17-year-old honor student, left the community library with a book in his hand and dreams in his heart. He never imagined that one misunderstanding could change how people saw him. As he crossed the parking lot, a patrol car stopped beside him. The officer stepped out, eyes filled with suspicion rather than curiosity. Jamal froze, confused, trying to smile politely. The officer's tone was sharp, questioning him about a recent theft nearby. Jamal's words stumbled as he explained he had just come from the library. But the officer wasn't listening, only judging. The moment felt heavy, unfair, and painful. Jamal looked at the flashing lights and felt small, powerless. He wanted to shout, to defend himself, but his voice trembled. Then, deep inside, he remembered his father's words, "Never let anger define your truth." He took a deep breath, hoping this moment would pass. It didn't. The officer kept pressing, assuming, doubting. People nearby started watching, whispering. Jamal's heart pounded, not from guilt, but from humiliation. His backpack lay open on the hood of the car, books, pens, a half-eaten sandwich, nothing else. The silence around him was louder than any noise. He could see in the officer's eyes a wall that reason couldn't climb. Jamal wanted to cry, but pride held him still. He remembered his mother's face that morning, proud of her son heading to college soon. He wouldn't let fear take that away. Then, another officer arrived, older, calmer. He glanced at Jamal, then at the younger officer, sensing the imbalance. "Let's slow down," he said quietly. The tension eased slightly, but Jamal's trust had already cracked. In that moment, he realized, sometimes the hardest thing isn't proving innocence, it's keeping faith in a system that forgets to see your heart. As the older officer questioned him gently, Jamal explained where he'd been, showing the library card still warm from his pocket. The man nodded, but the first officer wasn't convinced. "We'll check it out," he muttered, still defensive. Jamal stood there, hands trembling, mind racing. Should I call Dad? He wondered. His father was often away, an FBI agent, respected but strict. Jamal feared disappointing him, but now, the weight was too heavy to carry alone. He dialed the number with shaking fingers. "Dad," he whispered, voice breaking, "I need help." The officer heard the name, Agent Morris, and froze. The older one's eyes widened too. Jamal's calm tone shifted the air. Within minutes, the call reached places neither officer expected. Authority met authority, and justice began to stir quietly. Behind the scenes, when Agent Morris arrived, his presence filled the street like gravity itself. Dressed in plain clothes, he moved with quiet authority, not angry, but deeply disappointed. "I'm Jamal's father," he said, showing his badge calmly. The officers stiffened. The younger one stepped back, realizing the magnitude of his mistake. Jamal lowered his head, feeling both relief and sadness. His father looked at him, not with pity, but with strength. "You did the right thing," he said softly. "You stayed calm." The moment was powerful, not because of titles or ranks, but because truth had finally found its voice. The senior officer apologized, acknowledging the misunderstanding. But the damage was done, not to Jamal's record, but to his heart. He realized that sometimes respect only comes when power stands beside you, not when truth alone should have been enough. Later that night, Jamal sat quietly at the dining table, his father across from him. The air was heavy with unspoken pain. "Son," Agent Morris began, "what happened today isn't right. But you showed courage I can't teach." Jamal's eyes filled with tears. "Dad, why do they see me like that?" His father sighed deeply. "Because change is slow, but it begins with how we respond." He reminded Jamal that strength isn't in fighting back, it's in standing tall when the world doubts your worth. Jamal nodded, realizing that today wasn't just about injustice, it was about learning the cost of dignity. His father promised to file a report, not for revenge, but to remind the department that every uniform carries responsibility. That night, Jamal looked at the stars and whispered a promise to himself, "I'll make them see me for who I am, not what they assume." Days passed, and news quietly spread about what had happened. Some people defended the officers, others stood with Jamal. But through it all, he chose silence, not weakness, but wisdom. He focused on school, on his dreams, on proving that one moment would not define his life. His father's calmness became his strength. One evening, the same older officer visited their home, carrying a small envelope. "For you," he said. Inside was a written apology from the department, rare but sincere. Jamal smiled slightly. Forgiveness wasn't easy, but it felt freeing. He thanked the men, shaking his hand. The officer said, "You taught me something that day, to listen before judging." That simple line restored something inside Jamal that had been broken, faith that people can still change. Months later, Jamal stood on stage, receiving a community award for youth leadership. Cameras flashed, applause filled the hall, but his eyes searched for one person, his father. Agent Morris stood proudly at the back, tears shining in his eyes. Jamal spoke to the crowd, voice steady and full of purpose. "I once felt invisible. But I learned that silence can still speak truth. Change begins when we decide to be better, not bitter." The room fell silent, moved by the maturity of his words. The moment that once made him feel powerless had become his greatest source of strength. That day, Jamal didn't just win an award, he won back faith in humanity. And as he walked off the stage, he knew, forgiveness is not weakness. It's the bridge that turns pain into purpose.